In the early morning of October 12, 2014, a woman named Daniel Mercer vanished from her apartment in Brookpine, a quiet town where the biggest crimes were normally stolen bikes or noise complaints. Danielle was a 29-year-old graphic designer, known for her bright red hair and the way she always wore headphones around her neck, even when she wasn't listening to anything. Her friends described her as calm, introverted, and predictably predictable. She lived alone. She worked from home. She went to yoga on Wednesdays and bought the same groceries every Sunday. Nothing about her routine stood out until the morning she disappeared. At 8:17 a.m., her upstairs neighbor, a retired woman named Margaret, called the police because she heard Danielle's alarm ringing nonstop for nearly an hour. Danielle's alarm was one of those obnoxious beeping ones, and Margaret said it never went off longer than a few minutes because Danielle hated noise. When officers arrived, they knocked several times. No answer. They looked through the living room window and saw the lights were still on. The moment the officers stepped inside, they knew something was wrong. Danielle's purse was sitting on the kitchen table, her keys beside it, and her coffee maker was still running, half filled with lukewarm coffee. Her phone was on the couch. The screen cracked, something her friends said they'd never seen before because Danielle treated her tech like gold. The apartment wasn't trashed, but it had this strange, frozen-in-time feeling, like someone left in a hurry but didn't take anything with them. The officers moved toward the bedroom and found her bedsheets partially pulled off, as if someone had grabbed them during a struggle. But there were no signs of forced entry anywhere. Not the front door, not the windows, not the balcony. It was as if Danielle either walked out willingly or opened the door for someone she knew. The first clue showed up when detectives reviewed the apartment hallway camera. At exactly 2:43 a.m., Danielle was seen stepping out of her apartment wearing pajama pants and a hoodie. She wasn't carrying her phone or shoes or even a jacket. Worse, she didn't lock her door behind her, which was something she always did. In the footage, she seemed tense. Her head kept turning, like she was listening for something behind the door. Then she suddenly jerked her head toward the end of the hallway, toward the exit. And she whispered something. There was no audio on the camera, but when the detectives zoomed in, they could see her mouth silently forming two words, "Not again." Danielle then walked toward the stairwell, not the elevator. She paused once at the top of the stairs, looking down like she expected someone to be waiting there. Then she walked out of frame. That was the last time she was seen alive. Investigators pulled every outdoor camera around the building, but here's where the case got strange. The main parking lot camera glitched between 2:45 and 3:02 a.m., the exact window when Danielle would have exited the building. The footage returned to normal after 3:02, and there was no sign of her. No body, no struggle. No car speeding away, nothing. Detectives then looked into the comment she said on camera. Not again. It sounded like something she had experienced before. When they dug into her phone records and emails, they found something unnerving. For 7 months, Danielle had been receiving anonymous texts from a prepaid number. The messages were almost always the same. "I see you. You forgot to close your curtains. You left your light on. You didn't lock your window tonight." Danielle never responded, never told anyone, and never changed her number. But they found a note in her phone's drafts folder. It had never been sent to anyone. It simply said, "He's getting closer. I hear footsteps sometimes like he's inside the walls." Her building was old, built in the 1960s, and the walls were thin enough that tenants often heard each other moving around. But the note implied something entirely different, something personal and directed at her. The police originally suspected a stalker, but there was no DNA, no fingerprints, and no signs anyone else had been inside the apartment. The door locks were intact, and none of the neighbors reported seeing anyone suspicious until one person came forward, a man who lived in the building across the street. He said he often worked late nights and sometimes saw into the apartments across the way. He told police that for weeks before Danielle disappeared, he saw a shadow standing in her living room late at night. He assumed it was her, until he finally noticed something frightening. The shadow was taller than Danielle, much taller, and it didn't move like a regular person. He said it would stand in place for long periods, barely shifting, almost like it was listening to something. Police asked him why he never reported it. He said he thought it was a trick of the light. 3 weeks after Danielle vanished, a maintenance worker discovered something behind the drywall of the laundry room in her building. While repairing a leak, he found a small crawl space. It was barely big enough for someone to squat inside, and in that crawl space they found a stack of water bottles, food wrappers, a blanket, and a small notebook. Inside the notebook were drawings of Danielle's living room, her kitchen, her bedroom, all sketched from an angle that suggested the artist was watching from inside the walls. On one of the last pages there was a simple sentence written over and over. "She finally heard me. The case remains unsolved. Danielle's body was never recovered. No suspect was ever identified." But tenants who live in that building today say that sometimes, late at night, they still hear tapping sounds from inside the walls. What would you do in this situation? How would you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe for another twisted tale.